Welcome to episode 17 of the Light on Leeds podcast, and Happy New Year, Leeds. Well, I hope you've all had a fantastic Christmas period and are getting back on track now. Things have changed slightly here at Light on Leeds. We now have a brand new podcast editor whose name is Richard Without a Hat On. He came to my rescue and I would like to thank him very much for his help. The next guest that we have is Antony Butcher. He works at the University of Leeds, but he is going to be cycling across the United States to raise awareness of mental health. Please do have a listen. Welcome to episode 17 of Light on Leeds podcast. Today my guest is Antony Butcher. Hello.
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you so much for coming.
You're very welcome, thank you for having me.
No problem. So, Antony, I heard about you when I took over the People of Leeds Twitter account, and you tweeted to tell us something amazing that you're doing. So can you explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, of course. There was a question about New Year's resolutions, and mine is a fairly simple. I've just got one. I've been working towards it for a couple of years. In May, I'm going to be cycling from the east coast of America to the west coast of America, from Cape Cod to San Francisco, going via New York, Washington DC, Detroit, Chicago, and we'll be on the road for about 3 months and 4,000 miles as a solo cyclist.
That is amazing. And what is the reason that you're doing that?
So I've done quite a lot of fundraising over the years. I've done Land's End John O'Groats twice. Mm-hmm. I've done some other long distance bike rides, and I'm pretty terrible at them. What I tend to do is I'll say, right, I'm going to cycle for the length of a country, and I'll cycle and I'll prepare for about 2 or 3 months, and I'll do it, and then the garage goes back on the bicycle for about 3 or 4 years.
Right.
And so I'd always had this kind of dream in my head that if I was going to do another big charity bike ride, I can't just do Land's End John O'Groats for a third time. And so I kind of had these kind of couple of ideas running around in my head. I'm kind of really passionate about raising money for charity. My mum has multiple sclerosis, so I've raised now it's about £20,000 for charity.
Wow.
About £17,000 for the MS Society. And so I kind of was having all these different thoughts about, you know, what charity I want to raise money for, how I might want to do it, what I could do, and I was so busy thinking about that I didn't realise I was crashing into depression in 2017.
Oh dear.
I was working for a charity. I just started a job in February, and they were based in Europe, but they were moving to Leeds, and for reasons outside of anyone's control, they ended up not moving to Leeds, so I had an office with 8 desks, and just me day to day. So
wow. If
I travelled to work, I was sat there by myself, so I started working from home, and again then I was just isolated at home, and the work situation was quite tough, and that isolation just kind of really led me going down a path that wasn't one I'd gone down before, and I was sort of really struggling with my thoughts, and I having quite upset tummies, and I was sent to the GP by my wife, who also has a history of mental health issues, and kind of worked out that something wasn't wrong, and I thought they might give me, like, you know, some stronger Rennies or some antacids, and they told me I have depression with anxiety, and this kind of sort of kept going, and in August of 2017 we were in San Francisco. We had a friend of my wife's who was getting married over there, and we'd gone out there. It was kind of one of those, you know, big holidays of the year, and it was meant to be really exciting. And you know, when you go on a holiday and you think, oh, I've got to go back to work soon, and it's like, I don't really want to go. Mm-hmm. I kind of had a very extreme version of that. Every time I thought about work, just a huge surge of adrenaline would come through my body, skin would start prickling, start feeling sweaty, I wouldn't be able to sleep, I'd start shaking a little bit, and I knew at that point that I just had to quit my job and just get out of that situation because it was making things worse. Mm-hmm. And it was at that point in San Francisco I kind of had that realisation, and I remember thinking, this isn't me. Depression has taken over. I know who I am, and this is not who I am, and I can't do anything about it now. There's nothing I can do to change where I'm feeling right now, but when I'm feeling better, I'm going to. And that was when my head just went, yeah, cycle across America, come back to San Francisco, but do it by bicycle. So I just kind of committed to it and went, yeah, when I'm feeling better, that's what I'm going to do. So
do you think it was sort of having a goal in mind that helped you sort of work towards that and get out of that bad mental situation?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there are lots of different things that helped me get out of that situation, kind of getting a new job, supporting my wife, support of friends. I was sharing my experiences through social media, and people were coming back and saying, I've had this as well, and sharing their experiences with me. But I think having that goal, having that vision of who I was, I know who I am, and this is what I'm going to do when I'm feeling good, gave me something to aim towards. Mm-hmm. And I think what was also really good I work at the University of Leeds in student support, and one of the things we talk to our students about is the 5 ways to well-being.
Yeah.
Everyone has different kind of things that make them feel good, but there was a big survey or a big piece of research done about 10 years ago, and they found 5 things that can really improve your well-being. And they are giving. Well, raising money for charity counts as giving.
It does.
Being active. Well, I've had to run the London Marathon, and I'm now going to the gym 2 or 3 times a week. I'm going to spend 3 months going across America, so that's been helpful. Learning. Well, during this journey, I've been learning both about kind of sports psychology and sports science, but also about America and research in the places I'm going to. Connections. Now, obviously, I've got the connections of existing friends, but I've started to meet new people. You know, we're having this conversation today.
Yeah.
I'm kind of getting all of these new connections. And the 5th one is mindfulness. And mindfulness is one of those things that sounds very complicated, and I always kind of resist it inherently. But I now picture it as mindfulness is doing an activity that stops your brain having the ability to start thinking about all the other things you should be doing. And when you're cycling along, you've got to focus on what you're doing. If you stop paying attention and start thinking about, now, which shirts am I going to iron first tonight, you go into a pothole and you fall off. So it becomes a very mindful activity for me. So without design, I kind of set up this activity that forced me to do each of those 5 ways to well-being, and that's been really, really powerful for me. And it's terrifying.
Yeah.
But it's really exciting. It's
That's wonderful. Yeah, I think as well. I think setting yourself tasks that are slightly terrifying is also actually good, because you're getting yourself out of any sort of patterns that you've entrenched yourself in, and you sort of really pushing yourself to the limit is sometimes a good thing to be doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm a really big believer in, there are times in this life when someone says, do you want to do this? And you sit down and you kind of go pros and your cons, maybe if you're choosing university. And there are times in this life where you just have to listen to your gut, and you just have to go, yes, I'm going to do that. And then you have to work out how you're going to do it afterwards. But if if I'd sat down and worked out how much time and effort it would take me to prepare this, I'm not going to be earning a salary for 3 months. Every evening I go to work, I go home, and I've got to either go to the gym, or I've got to go to my yoga class, or I've got to contact some people who are putting me up in America, or I've got to do some social media posts. And it's greatly enjoyable, but it is, it's almost like another full-time job. If I'd thought about that before I'd said I'm going to do this, I probably wouldn't have.
Yeah.
But
now you're in it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm just a huge believer in serendipity. Sometimes you just have to say, yes, I'm going to do this. And that's what I've done with, like my previous bike rides, and that's what I've done with this. And yeah, it's busy and it's stressful, but I'm already meeting amazing people. I've got people in America who are bending over backwards to try and help me out. I've got one contact who's already invited me to come and stay with our family for American Independence Day, because I'm going to be there at about that time. And they're like, come and join our family, we want to show you what American Independence Day looks like. And so I'm kind of getting all of these wonderful experiences that wouldn't have happened otherwise. And it's just one of those things, like you tweeted as while you're on the People of Leeds account, and I was like, I'm cycling across America, and if that hadn't have happened, we wouldn't be having this conversation, we'd never have met, I wouldn't have cycled through Beeston in my life, I've seen things. And it's all of these little experiences that just make life a little bit richer, and just help you kind of remember that there's some kind of, I'm going to say deeper purpose, not some in like a religious or a theological way, but that it's really easy just to go to work, sit at the desk, come home, go to sleep, and do that for years and years.
Absolutely. And
sometimes just kind of pushing yourself to do something a little bit different and saying, yes, I'm going to do that, leads to wonderful things.
Yeah, I definitely believe in that. I think that I started this podcast on May the 28th, and actually I feel like in many ways the podcast saved my life, because I was in a particularly difficult time myself, and like you said, you can get caught up in your work, and you're going to work every day and you don't have anything outside of that. But actually, once I decided to do this, decided what it was I wanted to do, I've met so many great people, and like you say, like even though the admin, you're having to do posts, but actually I enjoy it so much. It's been one of the best things I've ever decided to do. Just meeting great people, and also shouting about the City of Leeds and the brilliant people who are in it, and having the opportunity to be able to give other people a voice, I really enjoy. Yeah,
absolutely. It's there's just so much potential in this life. Like, there are times when I think to myself, I just want to go and retire, and I think actually every day is, God, this is getting all a little bit sort of early morning Christian radio, but every day is a gift. And you've kind of got this potential. And there are some days, and when I think back to when I was in my kind of depressive episode state, there are some days where I would get up and I just wouldn't get up. I just couldn't face. And I'd be like, I'm going to give myself half an hour and I'm going to go downstairs and I'm going to have some breakfast. And I'd go downstairs and I'd just stare at my breakfast bowl and I wouldn't have the energy to eat. And in my head I'd be like, oh, you've got to do this, you've got to get a new job, you've got to, the builder's coming around tomorrow, so you've got to prepare for them. You should be taking advantage of this time. And it's tough, and that's fine, and that's what some days happen.
Mm-hmm.
So on the days when you are feeling okay, it's really easy just to coast, but actually I feel like sometimes if you push yourself, you get these new opportunities, these new experiences. And I'm sure that I'll go back to a bad place again. I'm still fairly young. I'm sure there'll be something that will happen in my life that's going to take me back to a bad place. But when I was in my bad place last time, one of the things that helped me out, as well as having a vision to aim towards, was having a history of experiences and memories that reminded me that I was a good person. So when I was struggling, I could think back to times when I was at university in a comedy society, times when I'd gone on holiday with my wife, times that I'd spent time with my family, times that I'd spent time with friends, previous fundraising challenges that I'd achieved. So I think it's also about creating yourself kind of this identity.
Yeah.
I'm hoping you've seen the film Inside Out.
I have seen the film Inside Out.
Disney Pixar film. It's a wonderful film. If you need a bit of a cry. One of my favourites. And I guess it's a bit like giving yourself islands.
Yeah.
The more different activities that you do, the more different friendship groups, the different islands. And I speak to lots of students. I work in a school where there's performers or they're musicians, and they study music, and they're in the music society, and they live with their musician friends, and they go on holiday with musician friends. And that gives them one really big, strong island. Mm-hmm. And that's great. But having a diversity of islands, having lots of different things, means that if someone gets shaken, if a friendship breaks down, if you find out you're not as good as playing a musical instrument as you want, if you don't get cast in a lead role in a play, you've got other places you can go to. So just saying yes and seizing these ridiculous opportunities leads to wonderful things that are really good for your well-being. Yeah,
you're right. I also work in the SES at University of Leeds.
Oh, do you?
I do, but in the medical school.
Oh, wow.
And we said the same because medical students work so hard, and that is one thing that they are always encouraged to do by the academic sub-deans. The same that you said is because they can end up living with medical students, and the whole world can become wrapped up in that, and they're again encouraged to have diverse interests and to have other things they can focus on outside of that very intense focus.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's it's tough being a student. But I think that's a really important lesson for people to learn young, and it feels like we're getting increasingly better about talking about well-being and mental health. Like when I was at school, it wasn't something that we talked about as far as I can remember, and now it's something that is in the media, and the royals are talking about it, and it's something that's kind of an acceptable conversation.
Sports stars as well. It was often seen as a very sort of masculine. Talking about football and cricket and things like that. I think it's fantastic that people are coming out and talking about these things in areas that you would necessarily have thought of as very sort of macho realms. I think it all helps, and I think as well just the idea that letting other people know that sometimes you don't feel okay. I think we can all go around with this like idealised version of what other people are like.
Yes.
I think that you're very on your own in these feelings.
Yeah.
And being able to tell other people, sometimes I felt absolutely rubbish.
Yeah.
And then the next day I felt a little bit better, or
I
think that's so important.
Yeah, I call it baked beans on toast syndrome.
Okay.
So if you go on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or whatever social media is acceptable today, you'll see people out in the Michelin-starred restaurants and having the pub lunches, or they've cooked something at home and they've cleaned off their kitchen counter. And I get home and like my kitchen counters are covered in pots and pans, and I'm like, I'm just going to have some baked beans on toast. The reality is that most of us have baked beans on toast more than we go out for these big fancy meals, but we don't talk about it.
Exactly that.
So one of the things that I've tried to do more and more is, be like, yay, look, I'm cycling across America, here's good. But also have the days where I'm like, you know what, I was meant to do all this tonight, I've gone home to read a book because I just don't have the energy. Mm-hmm. And just making that normal, because otherwise we feel like everyone is living these idealised lives and we feel kind of isolated from that. But they're probably feeling the same. There have been times when I put up these wonderful pictures of, look at this amazing thing that I've done, and I've just been feeling terrible, but I have this pressure to live up to it. Mm-hmm. So I think you're absolutely right. It's the more people who talk about this, the more we make it something that's normal to talk about, the more people are able to talk about it, and we start reducing the idea that there's stigma.
Yeah, or that there's some perfect way of being.
Yeah.
Which there isn't, and that somehow you're different because you're feeling these feelings, when in fact every single person does. Everybody that you've ever met, anybody that you ever put on a pedestal, you know, is not as perfect as you're imagining them to be.
Yeah, and I think, you know, you're particularly right around men and mental health. You know, when you look at the rates of diagnosable mental health issues, and in many ways I'm talking kind of about the low-level mental health issues, and there's a huge issue with much more serious mental illness that it's really important we don't forget. But when you do look at people who have anxiety, depression, women are much more likely to be diagnosed than men. They've got a much higher prevalence of it. But traditionally they're also much better at talking about it. They'll talk to their friends. And men have this idea that if we talk about how we're feeling, that makes us weak. Like a lot of male role models, you know, it's about being strong. When I was having my depressive episode, the first thing I remember feeling when someone said to me, "You've got depression, anxiety," was, "No, I don't. I'm a rock. I'm the one who supports other people. I'm there for my wife. I'm there for my mum as she moves into a nursing home. I'm there for my dad as he gets older. I'm there for my other friends who need to talk to me. It can't be happening to me." And it took me a while to realise that actually that's such a dangerous viewpoint. And I think it's really good to see these, you know, these sporting icons, the royals, men being more open about talking how they're feeling, because the result of men not talking is that the rate of, I hope this is okay to say this podcast, but the rate of suicide for men is significantly higher than it is for women, because we keep it all inside and we bottle it up until we can't find a way out. And I've been to that place. I've been to that place where I thought, is the easiest way out of this situation just to remove myself from the situation? And I was lucky because that terrified me, and I had a wife who could support me, and I had parents who were able to kind of relate their experiences to that, and I had friends who had been to a similar place and could tell me it got better. But if I didn't have all of those things, if I hadn't had that diversity of different activities when I was younger, and I wasn't lucky enough to be married, then who knows where that thought could have gone.
I know.
And that's one of the things I've started giving school talks. So a whole part of this ride is about raising money for charity. But a lot of it is about using my journey, this exciting idea of I'm cycling across America, to have a conversation about this is my mental health journey. And it's not the most serious in the world, but it was enough to leave me feeling in a really dangerous and scared place. And I just want to use that message to encourage other people to open up. And so I've spoken to hundreds of people now. I've been to schools in Ilkley. I'm booked in to go and visit schools in Otley. I'm starting to book in schools in America.
Brilliant. And is primary, secondary, or both? At
the moment it's been secondary, but I'm opening up to primary as well, and it's just, I'm kind of at the stage where I'm just exploring the best way to tell that journey to different audiences, because you don't want to go into a group of 4 or 5 year olds and be like, hey, guess what happened the time that I was walking by the side of a canal and my thoughts lost control of themselves. But you can still tell the message of, you know, I'm doing on this journey, but there are times when I feel sad too, and you can kind of use kind of emotions and sort of much lower level ways to talk about it. I'm visiting some businesses, I'm visiting local Rotary groups, and just trying to use my journey to share that. And there are lots of other people who probably do it more eloquently than me, but I've been through that, and I have all sorts of life experiences that mean that I'm confident in talking about this. So I feel like there's this is something that I feel I should be able to do, because not everyone is in that lucky position where they've had that privilege of opportunities to be able to stand up in front of people and talk about something that makes them feel really vulnerable.
Exactly. And so is there anywhere, how would people get in touch with you if they wanted to book you to come along and talk?
So probably the best way is through my website, or through Facebook. I'll kind of respond to either one of those. I've got one of those websites, it's just my name, and it's slightly awkward, so I might have to spell it a couple of times, but we can put the link on
we can totally put the link in the notes.
So if this was a YouTube video, I'm doing a bit where I'm pointing down below and be like, look below, it will be there. But yeah, if you head to my website, there's a whole section on there about my experience of talking about mental health, and there's a video of a talk that I gave recently to 216-year-olds.
Wow.
And that you can contact me through there, but you can also find me on Facebook and drop me a message through there, and I'll pick up on that.
Excellent.
And I'm not looking to make any money out of this myself. If people want to make a donation towards my fundraising, then that's wonderful. But I'm doing this because I want to raise awareness of mental health and more. You know, I speak to an audience of 200 kids, and probably 90% of them, for the bit where I'm just talking about student support at university, are kind of aware that it's going on, but they're kind of a little bit glazed. And you start talking about, well, this is what happened to me, and you kind of see them all just heads turn and be like, what? And they're interested. And even if you just connect with one person, even if just one person walks away thinking, I'm going to tell my mum, I'm going to tell my teacher, that's a really important thing.
It absolutely is.
I'm absolutely happy to come and talk to anyone. And any groups that would be interested in hearing from me.
And I think you're right. I think even with, like, you know, it sounds absolutely daunting to me, 216-year-old, but I think you're right, that thing about just having your own personal story. So, you know, anybody could go along and talk sort of generically about these issues, but you having the bravery to go along and speak about what happened to you personally, I think that must create a really great connection with an audience, because you're putting yourself out there to tell them this.
Yeah, it's really strange. I look at other people who do this, who talk about their experiences with anorexia or their experiences with anxiety, and I think, God, that must be really hard, and it's inspirational. I see them kind of getting the message back from people who say, this has had a real impact on me. And I still don't count myself amongst that.
You should.
And it's something, you know, we talk a lot about it at universities as imposter syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a lot of students come to university and feel like everyone is cleverer than them.
Yeah.
And I still feel that, and I think it's important to acknowledge that, because I know that people look at me and go, you're doing a really great thing, and I'm like, well, I've just gone and talked a little bit, and afterwards I went to the Marks and Spencer's bakery nearby and I had 2 donuts. That's the bit that's probably just as exciting for me. So yeah, I think it's you know, it's really strange how we perceive ourselves.
Yeah, I think it's important to remember that as well. And like you were saying, the whole Inside Out film.
Yeah.
That whole idea of, you know, you have one sort of internal world and then you've got your external world, and sometimes it's very difficult to sort of stand back and realise that some of the things that you're internalising are not necessarily what everybody else is seeing, or is not the world to them.
And I think there's a really big lesson here for life in general. We live kind of in this world where, and you know, maybe I'm going to slightly display my political leanings here, but most of the news that I see these days scares me. You know, we're starting a new decade already. Climate change means that Australia is basically just entirely on fire. We're potentially facing another war in the Middle East because of, well, I'm not going to display my views too much, but because of the political leadership that we have, we're kind of leading towards our own political situation in the UK that I feel very uncomfortable with, and the information, the sources, the articles that I read make me feel like we're not going in a good direction, and other people might feel in different ways, and it's really easy to feel isolated in all of that, and it's really easy to feel like you're powerless and you're disconnected, and it's really easy to be confrontational, to have kind of the us versus them. How can these people have done this to my future? How can this person be potentially leading us to war? How can our reliance on cars and transport and electricity mean that some people around the world are, you know, drowning or dying in fires? But underneath it all, we're human beings, and when I look at all of the people in the media, even the ones who I really wouldn't be too upset if they just disappeared tomorrow and I never heard about them again. You know, they're parents, they're friends, they've probably helped people when they've been struggling, or at least I'd like to think that they've got some humanity within them. And I think one of the things that's been really interesting whilst I've kind of been talking about this is that acknowledgement of we've all got our own things going on underneath, and even if we look like we're calm on the surface, most of the time we're all peddling like little ducks underneath with no idea what's going on or how we're dealing with life, and we all get presented with these new situations. I recently had to support my mum to move into a nursing home, and as part of that I had to deal with the way that funding works for people who rely on social services, who need to be in a nursing home, who have no money left, and it was terrifying. I had no idea what to do. You know, but I'm not the only person to have gone through that. Lots of people have gone through these challenging situations, and yes, not everyone's being silly enough to decide to cycle across America. Everyone has their own day-to-day challenges, whether that's relationships, whether that's surviving at work, whether that's keeping friendships going, whether that's different hobbies. And I'm really intrigued to kind of see that's something that goes on, but we're not good at talking about it.
No, we're definitely not good at talking about it, and I'm not sure that social media particularly helps that. But hopefully we're getting better. It's definitely the awareness of mental health is there all the time, which I think is absolutely fantastic. And sometimes it can be a little bit worrying, because you kind of feel like with some places, is it sort of like a tick in the box kind of thing, and are they actually as supportive as they could be? But it's a little bit like vegan sausage rolls. At the end of the day, if it raises awareness in some way and makes people think about it a little bit more, and even big companies are having to take it on board, eventually it will all become more genuine. And
it's little steps. You know, I'm a vegetarian. I've been trying to go to Greg's to get a vegan steak bake for days now. Every time I go in, they're sold out. Yeah. So you kind of hear people saying, well, this is ridiculous. I'm like, well, it's ridiculous. Why have they sold out?
Yeah.
And you're right, I'm sure there are lots of people for whom it's a box ticking exercise. I work in student support, and it's really important for me that when I say to a student, I'm going to find a way to help you, that I'm being genuine about that. But of course, it's, there's frameworks and structures we have to work within. I look at big employers who say we're supportive of mental health, but the biggest issue around mental health at the university for staff, it's not about not having access to puppy rooms or whatever. It's about people feeling like they've got too much work to do and they're having to work outside of hours. And I'm thinking particularly of academics here. Obviously there's been some industrial action recently, and I know that lots of academics who say, actually, I literally cannot do the work that I have to do as part of my job within the Monday to Friday 9 to 5. If I don't mark this work over the weekend, then it's not going to be met by the deadline, and the students are going to suffer and I'm going to suffer. So sometimes it does feel like it's lip service, but there's also really great examples of times when it's not lip service out there. When I was coming out of my depressive episode, I temped for a while in the Worsley building, which might be
I spent quite a lot of time in that beautiful brutalist building.
It's I'm glad to have worked there simply so I know how to get around it. It's such a maze. And there was a time, when I was at my lowest point where I just couldn't even face applying for a job, because the idea that someone would want to employ me, even though I knew I had all these skills, I was like, I physically can't face what happens if they reject me. How's it going to make me feel? So I temped for a bit, and that meant I was speaking to people. I was in an office with a couple of people, and I was seeing them, and I had some structure in my life, and that was really good. And then I started applying for lots of jobs in the new year of January 2018, or over Christmas 2017, 2018. And with the way that the university job application systems work, once you've done one application, it's really easy to copy and paste onto the next.
Luckily, because it's very complicated.
But most of them are asking the same question.
Yeah.
Excellent communication skills, excellent organisation skills, so you can copy and paste. And I ended up getting loads and loads of job interviews. I'm really British. It was quite embarrassing. I was like, please stop giving me job interviews. This is really awkward.
You make me feel too good.
Yeah, this is... And the first one I completely messed up because I had a cold, and apparently I was doing very well until they asked the question, tell us about what you least like about working. And what I meant to say was something really intelligent linked to my mental health around I dislike being given large amounts of work at short notice that require me to work beyond the time I would normally work without any support or isolation. And what I think I just said was when people give me work. So I didn't get that job. So that was great. It was tough between me and someone else. And then the next 3 interviews I went for, I ended up getting offered the job. And they all rang within the space of an hour. And there was a moment where I went, can I just accept 3 jobs and work 23 hours a day? I was like, no, that's not going to happen. But one of the things I'd done in the interviews, because I had been sharing my story already and I was building up a vocabulary, I was confident in talking about what happened to me, is they get to the end and they say, do you have any questions for us? And I know all the sites say that you're meant to ask cheesy questions like, when can I start? Or can we negotiate salary? And I just turned around and said, yeah, I do have a question. 3 months ago I had a depressive episode and I ended up quitting my job, and this is the experience that I had, and here are the things that helped, and I've still got all of these skills, and I think I'd be really valuable to your organisation, but I know that work is something that can impact my mental health. Why do I want to work here? And 2 of the places gave good answers and said, yes, of course, we'll be supportive, and they said all of the things that I would expect them to say. And the 3rd place, the panel kind of were bumping over themselves to say, here's where you're going to like working here, here's the stuff that we do to support your well-being. I'll be your manager, and if you get this job, I'll do anything that I can to support you. If you need to attend therapy, then you can do that as part of your job. And it was actually, because part of the role was student support, they were saying, I just want to point out, this isn't just about us saying, these are the things that we'll do to support you. I just want to say that your experiences will make you valuable for this job. And they were kind of tripping over themselves. And in my head, I was like, that's the job that I want to get. And the deal was sealed, and that was the only job that would negotiate over salary, which was, not the only reason I got it, but those two reasons. And I've got that job, and I've been in that job. I've changed a bit, but I've been in that job with the same manager for 18 months now.
Excellent.
And it's been incredible. There were times when I had to go to therapy, and I was just told, go to therapy. If you need to take some time afterwards, and it's mid-afternoon, just go home. Don't come back. Look after yourself. We want you to be in the best place possible. And one of my big triggers of my mental health is that my mum has multiple sclerosis. She's in a nursing home. She's kind of it's a degenerative condition that only goes in one direction for the type of MS my mum has. And when my mum was needing to move again, I was just told, look, if you need to take time off, we're going to find a way to put it down as carers leave, because you're helping to arrange permanent care for someone you have responsibilities for, and we'll do what we can. And there are times when I came back from that and it'd be like lunchtime, and I'd be like, I just can't do anything today. And I'm like, that's fine. Tidy your desk up, sort out your electronic filing system, do some little jobs that you've not had a chance to do otherwise, but we'll support you in what you need to do. And that has just been revelatory to me, the idea that the investment in kind of supporting someone and sometimes saying that means your work's not going to be as good, but would rather that you're in a good place to do good work tomorrow than pushing you to do more work and leaving that person to feel like they can't carry on, has been revelatory. And I've now been really lucky to be able to support other people who have their own mental health issues. I manage them, and it's wonderful to be able to sit down and have a conversation where they said, I've got a bit of a history, to say, okay, let me tell you my experience first, so that I'm not just saying this as platitudes. I'm saying this as I'm a human being who's had the same experiences, and yes, I'm your manager, but the most important thing to me is that you're okay. And then when they text and say, I'm not feeling great today, my IBS is flaring up, or I'm struggling a bit, or it's been a family issue, just okay, that's fine, you take the time you need, you come back when you're ready and we'll support you. And that feels like it's been really successful. And we have a team who are really dedicated and passionate to their work. So it can work, and it's not been a big thing. And actually, yes, there have been days where someone could have come in and we said, no, take the day off, look after yourself, and we've had to cover their work. But the next week they're back and they're working, absolutely going for it.
Yeah.
So it is possible to do.
It is. And it's reciprocal, isn't it? If you're really helpful and supportive to people, you're going to get the best out of them.
Absolutely.
If you're just going to force people to keep working when they're at the lowest ebb, you're not going to get the best out of them, and you're probably going to damage them for the future. Yeah. Because they've had no chance to sort of restock. Yeah.
And I'm a manager. I've got targets that we want to hit. I want all that to happen. But I'm a human being. And I'm going to work here for however long. I'm going to work for another 40 years, or however long it is till the government raises the retirement age to the day before you die, or whatever it is. But there's more to life. There has to be more to life. I go home and I spend time with my wife, and it's the experiences that kind of make this life worth living. So there has to be more to life and get this spreadsheet finished.
Definitely, I totally agree. I'm really lucky as well. My line manager is absolutely fantastic. She's great with anything like that. Very supportive, always looking for ways to help you, or is able to give you like concrete actions that you can take that will help you. And I think that's just invaluable. Yeah,
and I want to feel really optimistic here and saying I've heard enough examples of really positive leadership recently that this is hopefully something that kind of goes from being a lip service thing goes to becoming normal, because I've been through this experience where I've been managed, and I'm now a manager, and I'm passing that on, and I know one day some of the people I manage will go on to manage people themselves, and hopefully they'll kind of keep this line going. And I'm sure it's different out there, and I'm sure her organisations, I love working for the university because I feel like I'm doing some good in the world, and there's not like a bottom line sales target. And if you live in a world where you have sales target, maybe it's a bit harder to have that conversation in that way. But maybe hopefully some of this will percolate through, and the idea that the most important thing is the sales target will kind of maybe become secondary one day. I'm being optimistic here.
But I think it's a good thing to be optimistic. It's a good thing to look forward to the future with a little bit of hope, especially like you say in this particularly difficult time. It's been I think what I noticed with my own mental health is I know when things are getting bad, when I worry far too much about the news, and I let it affect me far too much. It's like a little hint to myself that I need to take a break, because there's only so much capacity in your brain to worry about so many things. And if it's getting to that point, that's the point where I need to switch off and just not worry about those things for a little bit, because it's a sign that there are other things that I need to sort out.
And technology is wonderful. Like I can see what's happening on the other side of the world. I can speak to family members who I have in Australia and get an instant response in a way that 100 years ago there'd been a ship come back going, Australia's on fire, and you'd have to wait another 6 months to find out what's going on. But it means that suddenly you get all of the news all at once, and of course news is sensationalist. You never hear all of the good stories. You hear the stuff that's going to sell copy, and different newspapers have different styles, but of course they're all looking to make sure people read their contents. And it is so easy just to look at all this stuff, things that we have absolutely no control over. and go, oh, this is terrible, and so we're worrying, but it's not achieving anything, and so we worry even more because we've not achieved anything, and then we don't do the little actions maybe that we could do to help out, and it's a dangerous cycle, I think. It
is, yeah. I think you just need to be. I think hopefully the next generation coming up, I think are more tech savvy. The more they understand more about, say, fake news, or looking for sources and things like that, and as the tabloids lose hold over the next generation because they don't read that kind of thing, and I think because they're more aware of the world, but also what they can do to affect change and things. I'm hoping that because they're growing up in this world, they'll be better able to deal with it perhaps than in my generation. I have lived some of my life without the internet, and then to go from that to how quickly we've moved, that is quite a big transition, I think, for people my age and older. Whereas that's my hope, is that the younger generation, because they're growing up in this, will find routes and ways to deal with it better than we do, maybe. Hopefully.
Fingers crossed. And it's I can't imagine when I was a kid growing up, and it's further away than I would like it to be. I remember that, depending on how you're doing on Pokemon, how you did on the football team, might determine how people can impact on you. But you go home and you're at home.
Yeah.
And I do worry a little bit that social media suddenly means that when I was at school, we were just getting the rise of like text bullying.
Right.
Like, someone might get your mobile number and they might text you bullying. And I remember everyone, all the teachers, being like, "How do we deal with this?" And I was like, "Well, don't ask me." But suddenly now we live in a world where a lot of people, they're on Facebook, they're on Snapchat, they're on Twitter, and they can be seen outside of school.
I do worry about that. You're right, yeah.
And I worry that kind of makes people. I went to see Dear Evan Hansen recently.
To see what? Sorry.
Dear Evan Hansen. It's a new musical. It's been in Broadway for a while. It's come to the West End.
Oh, okay.
It's a musical kind of around a story that's based around mental health, and one of the characters takes their life early on, and kind of how that explodes. And it's brilliant. And it takes some tissues. It's not. I'm not going to say I enjoyed it. I'm glad that I went. It was a very powerful, intense experience. But one of the things they talk about in the script, and one of the things that they do, is they've got these kids growing up, sort of teenagers in America, and one of them says, I can't show any of my weirdness on social media, because if I show something that's weird, it's going to get picked up on and I get teased for it. Then we come back to all of these islands that we were talking about earlier on, all these things that make us unique in who we are. They're all weird stuff. The things that make me are my big ginger face and my silly face pulling, the fact that I've decided to cycle across America, the fact I've talked about my own mental health experiences, the fact I'm in a comedy group where half of what I have to do is do things that are completely absurd. I have to stand on a stage in front of 40 people and pretend to be a giraffe being born. And it's the weird stuff that makes life really good.
Of course it is. And it's what makes people interesting. Who wants everybody to be the same?
Yeah.
Nobody wants that. Everybody wants something slightly different. And it's what makes people wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the many reasons I love my wife is because she's so weird. Like, it's the bits of her that are weird that make our relationship really strong, and I hope that she feels the same way about me. Especially if she's listening to this later on. But that's the one worry I have about social media, is that because people feel like they're constantly on display, they constantly feel like they have to kind of just present meme culture and fit in with everyone else. And it's not always like that, and the internet does allow this kind of long tail of, if you are particularly interested in 1970s German punk music, you can find other people who do that.
Yeah.
But on the kind of Facebook world, when all of your school friends are there, I just worry that sometimes people maybe aren't who they really are, because they worry that they're being judged, and that's concerning. Yeah,
it is concerning, and I think it's probably something that we're going to have to sort of learn as we go, because I think it's almost like we're not in it enough yet to sort of stand back and make too many judgments just yet. We could sort of see, but I think it's good to be aware of how this can negatively affect people, and have conversations such as these, so other people can think, oh wow, I'd never thought of that actually. Maybe what everyone presents on Facebook is not the full story.
Maybe the school talk I need to be giving is less about why we should be kind and more about why we should be as weird as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And accept each other's weirdnesses.
Yeah. and accept each other's differences and uniqueness, because we are all different.
Yeah, definitely.
People love different people. People feel differently about their identity, their gender identity, their sexual identity, their religious identity. I really cannot stand horror movies, I think. And why would anyone pay to scare yourself? Some people love it and can't understand why I like Frozen. And that's fine. And maybe we just need to face all of these kind of different. We have all these different. I'm just trying to find a way to get a joke about "let it go" in here. I'm not doing very well. I think we just need to accept that people are going to be different, and that's okay.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful. I've always thought that being described as weird was a compliment, to be honest.
yeah, and that's I am very definitely because I do improv comedy and because I have to do all of these things, and I don't drink alcohol. And improv comedy, the easiest way to describe it is deliberately allowing your conscious mind to shut down and just allowing your subconscious mind to speak and to act. And it's really weird sometimes hearing what your subconscious mind is actually saying. Oh, I'm sorry, I don't know where that came from. But it's great because I'm around, I'm regularly around a group of people, and I allow this inner weirdness to come out, so I have an idea of what that is.
Yeah.
God, I can't imagine if I suppressed that and I wore a suit every day and I pretended that I was normal and I had to go out drinking every evening to shut that down. I'm quite happy just allowing that to come out as part of my normal day-to-day life.
So what is the comedy group that you're involved in?
So I'm afraid it's not in Leeds.
Okay, that's fine. We'll still talk about it. We'll allow it.
It's Manchester-based.
All right.
So I was at University in Bangor in North Wales.
Okay.
And Bangor is lovely. I love the University of Leeds. But if you're a student in Leeds, there's so much popular culture. There's so many different nightclubs and pubs. In Bangor, there were 2 nightclubs when I was a student. And one of them was sort of one where, once you were there for the evening, you just couldn't move because your feet were stuck to the floor. So if you wanted to have fun, if you wanted to make friends, it had to be through societies. You had to go out and do something weird, otherwise you just sit by yourself. And the weirdness that I did, I wanted to join a drama group, and I did, but at our freshers fair, the first group that I came across was the improv comedy group, and I went, okay, I'll give this a go. Just like we were saying earlier, I was like, yep, let's see what happens.
Yeah.
And a lot of the people who are in it at the same time as me have found ourselves living in and around the north. Most of them kind of Manchester, Wigan, over the peaks, and then me over in Leeds. And some of them sort of kept on doing the comedy. So probably about 4 or 5 years ago, took a couple of shows to the Edinburgh Fringe, and we were like, actually, we do this because we really enjoy it, so let's carry on. And so we do. So we now do a monthly show in the Northern Quarter of Manchester.
Excellent.
And we fill out a little room in the back of a pub, and we have a load of fun, and the audience have a load of fun, and it's just another weird thing that kind of makes me feel like I'm doing something with my life.
And what are you called? What is the comedy group called?
The group is called Thespionage.
Thespionage. I like
that. Yeah, and it's just a really nice group of people, and it's been 10 years now since most of us met, and I was kind of reflecting back that yes, I love going on stage and I love the skills that I've gained as part of that, and it's one of the reasons I can go and speak at a school and talk about mental health, because if you have to stand up on a stage and make an audience laugh, then standing up and talking about something serious is, I don't have to make them laugh. This is easier. But at the same time, the thing that's going to be most powerful is the friendships that have grown out of that.
Yeah.
These are my closest friends. In there is my best man. In there are the people who I've talked to about things that only 2 or 3 people know about, the few secrets that I haven't kind of talked about in public. And that's kind of really important to me, is that I've got these friendships because of that. And this is my weird outing, but for other people it might be knitting, or it might be enjoying sort of Japanese culture in cartoons, or it might be food, or it might be running, or whatever it is. But it's really good fun, and we enjoy ourselves. I'm not going to make a career out of it.
No.
You're not going to see me on the Apollo stage anytime soon. But it's just really nice to kind of go there every month and just have an excuse to let my hair down a bit.
Yeah, exactly, and just have something really good to enjoy.
Yeah.
So we always ask our podcast guests 3 questions.
Okay.
The first question is, can you tell me something that is great about Leeds?
Yeah. So I'm going to cheat a little bit.
Okay.
And you'll see why in a minute. I'm going to say public transport.
Really?
Yeah.
That's controversial.
It is controversial. And yes, I know that Northern Rail are getting an absolute pasting at the moment, and TransPennine are, and the buses are as well, and there's lots of issues. And if you had another 45 minutes, I could go into, because one of my other weird things is I really like transport, so I've read all of the stories behind it, and I can tell you that taking the franchise off Northern won't make things any better. The issues are all infrastructure based, and ironically it's actually the government who are currently blaming Northern who are probably responsible for lots of the issues that are going on.
That's a turn up for the box. Fancy doing that.
Yeah, but it's a whole minefield. But the reason I say public transport is I grew up in the southwest.
Right.
I grew up in a town of 10,000 people, quite a nice little town. Probably the nearest thing would be somewhere like maybe Otley or Ilkley. Lots of nice shops on the edge of the mall. It's very pleasant. But the southwest doesn't have many people in it, so the nearest city was a half an hour drive away. But before I could drive, it was an hour on the bus. And if you got there and you wanted to go to the next bigger city, so the nearest city was Plymouth, which is kind of a little bit like Bradford. And if you wanted to go to the next city, you either had Truro, which is kind of, one of those tiny cities that isn't really a city. Sorry to any Cornish listeners. Or you had Exeter, which is kind of a little bit like a smaller version of York.
Yeah.
And from Plymouth to Exeter was an hour on the train. So I used to do some stuff when I was young that meant I had to go to Exeter for meetings every now and again. And to get there would take me broadly about 2.5 hours in each direction. I had to get a bus in, I had to wait for a train, get the train in, and then walk there. And so coming to the north, and yes, things could be so much better, and they should be so much better, but I live in Shipley, and on a normal bad day, and sometimes there are days where a train is cancelled, I sometimes have to wait an extra 10 minutes for a 15-minute journey into Leeds city centre. If a bus was cancelled when I was a kid, that was half an hour, and then you've still got an hour to travel. I can't believe that I can get to 7 or 8 or 9 major cities within the time it would have taken me to get to the one city that was near me.
Yeah.
And that transport, okay, I wish it went a little bit later, but it runs till 11:30 at night. And in my hometown, if you wanted to leave Plymouth you had to leave at 9 o'clock. That's the last bus. Yes, things could and should be so much better, but I'm able to live up here without a car and get to most places most of the time without any major issues. So public transport is my answer for good things.
That is a really nice perspective, especially as it's cropped up so many times on the other side of the questions that we ask. So yeah, that's nice to be able to see it from your point of view.
Yeah.
So can you tell us something you think is not so great about Leeds?
Public transport. That's my cheating. Yes, it's really good. And yes, I'm lucky to live in a place where even on a bad day it's maybe a 10-minute delay. But we could be doing so much more. I don't want to give any, bonus points to Boris Johnson for saying this in the Conservative Manifesto, but we're the largest urban conglomeration in the European Union that doesn't have a light rail network. And why? Why? The whole city is designed around it. There are dual carriageways coming out of Leeds in a number of directions that really would be absolutely perfect for a light rail network. And we know in Manchester, in Nottingham, in Edinburgh, yes, it takes money and it's disruptive, but once it's up, it's transformational and it allows people to get out of their cars. And we live in this really ridiculous world where most of us are kind of adoring Greta Thunberg and all the work that she's doing and saying that she's really brave and acknowledging that we're in a climate emergency and then carrying on doing the same thing and driving anywhere. And the bottom line is that there is, in my opinion, no need to own a car in Leeds. And I'm lucky I've lived in a place where I've deliberately got rid of a car, but we could be doing so much more. I reckon with 10 to 15 years of hard work we can make it so that 80% of people in Leeds don't need a car. And yes, there will be some people who need it for mobility and accessibility reasons, and we should absolutely build that in so that people who need to can still get into the places that they need to go. But there's so much more we could be doing in terms of promoting active travel, in terms of taking cars out of the city centre. There are so many, I commute to and from work and I sit at the traffic lights with 40 people around me waiting for the cars to come up, and 15 cars with one person and will drive past me. And I'm like, why are they getting precedence? Why are these vehicles being allowed to take any precedence over us? Because more people move by footpath. The footpaths are kind of round, we can't get past each other, and yet there's sort of 3 lanes of traffic. And then you look at Leeds City Council, which says we're going to counter this by introducing a clean air zone. I go, great, this is brilliant, because I know that people are dying young. We know that hundreds of thousands of people are dying before they should because of pollution in the air, and we should do something about this and say we're going to tackle the most polluting vehicles. They go, excellent. They go, which are buses, and I'm like, what? Yeah, it's going to be buses and it's going to be taxis and lorries. And I'm like, yeah, they are the most polluting vehicles, but buses carry 50 people and cars carry 1. We can't do it on cars because it will mean that people who rely on a car to get around are adversely affected, and it's already too expensive. And I go, but we've frozen fuel duty for 14 years whilst raising rail fares my voice has gone higher now, raising rail fares above inflation every year. And the people who are most likely to be suffering from air pollution are the people who live in the poorest areas of Leeds. Oh, and it's only going to extend into North Leeds and the leafy suburbs, and not South Leeds, because we've built all of these motorways around these communities that are for some reason poor. Yeah, because they've got motorways running through them. And of course it should include that area. And we've got to be ambitious, and it's going to be difficult, and it's going to be a challenge if you're used to using a car, and if you've got kids who go to a football team on the other side of Leeds. But we've got, all the scientists say we've got 12 years to make a difference. It's a big deadline, and yes, it's arbitrary, but in 12 years' time, if we haven't hit this threshold of reducing temperature rises, then our kids are going to live on a planet that's going to be exceptionally different. And I just feel like we could be being so much ambitious, and Leeds is perfect for it. One of the other options I was thinking about for why it's nice to live in Leeds, it doesn't rain here. I'm sorry, it just doesn't rain here. I grew up in the southwest, and the Atlantic comes and it dumps all of its clouds on it. And I went to University of North Wales, and the Atlantic comes and dumps all of its rain over Snowdonia. A bad day's weather in North Wales was when the rain came through in waterproof trousers. And yes, there are some hills in Leeds, but it's not terrible. There's lots of flat areas as well. We could be doing so much more. So that's my answer.
Yeah, well, it's a very good answer, and I'm sure there is just so many people who will agree with that.
Yes, and the final thing I'd say, and I'm going to be controversial and challenge people, is yes, it's fine to say that we need better public transport, and yes, it's fine to say we need buses. However you do public transport, it's not going to take you from door to door. If we're going to completely revolutionise how we travel around in Leeds and around the country and around the world, which we need to if we're not going to leave it looking like Australia in 50 or 100 years' time, and I'm not going to go into the science because people much cleverer than me have done that and they all basically agree, it's going to mean some changes for us as well. I don't have a car, and there are days when that's difficult. There are days when we've got to take stuff to the tip. I've made my wife carry it in rucksacks, and we've walked there, and I go, where the hell have you come from? I go, well, we have some stuff to take. And it means that there are some things that I'd like to do that I can't do because they're in the middle of the countryside and I can't get there. But that's just the way it has to be. The car has allowed us to explore things in a way that is really great, and it's given us freedom, but it's now becoming a yoke around our neck. And honestly, if that means that we've got to change our lives and give up some things, if that means that people aren't going to be dying prematurely and we're not going to have so many people killed on the roads, and as a cyclist that's something that I kind of am aware of all the time, it's going to be difficult. It's going to be really difficult. And so my challenge to everyone listening is think about, could you live without a car? And yes, the buses could be much better and they're getting worse, and yes, Northern Rail is crap, but how could you do that? What could you do? Because all the evidence suggests that once people get rid of a car and they start cycling, they start taking the bus, they realise that actually most of the time it's not too bad. They just have to go to a different shop.
Yeah.
Or maybe the next time that they're moving, if I work at the University of Leeds, I chose to live in a place that has a good transport link to Leeds. And I know lots of people who live in South Leeds and work in North Leeds, and live in North Leeds and work in South Leeds. And maybe we just need to kind of think about just recalibrating, why have we allowed ourselves to live this life, and how can we kind of make actions ourselves that are going to contribute to this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's very good. And yeah, I hope everybody does think about that. So my final question would be, even if somebody were a long-term resident of Leeds, can you tell us about a hidden gem that they may never have heard of?
See, now this is a really difficult one to me because I come in and out of Leeds. I'm going to give advice that I give to my students, which is, Leeds is great. It's a big city. There's lots here. There's probably stuff that I don't know about that's great. I want to talk about the improv comedy scene here, but the answer I'm going to give is the countryside around and the towns around. And yes, most people probably know this, but I think I'm going to say the ability to get out to the towns around and to enjoy them and to get back without much effort, through bus, through train. And the one I always say to my students is Ilkley. And yes, most people need to probably be there. Almost all of my clothing comes from Ilkley. I get the train there, it costs about £5. There's a fantastic vegetarian cafe called the Veggie Cafe. It's the only vegetarian cafe that my meat-eating family members and in-laws will accept going to. It is that good. You can walk up onto the moors, get some fresh air, walk along all of these big houses that none of us will be able to afford, and then you go to the charity shops in Ilkley, and you just get all of this amazing clothing. I've bought things that literally haven't been worn and have the tag on and say they should have been £80, and I've got it for a £5. So I think that's my advice to someone who didn't grow up in a city is, yes, Leeds is great, but get out of the city, take a train, take a bus, find the places that you can go to, and just see what's around you here.
That's really good advice, very good advice indeed. And I think as well, if you go to slightly posher places, you get much better stuff in charity shops.
Oh yes. This is why I go to Oakley. Not that the charity shops around me aren't great, and I do sometimes go there, but I know that if I go there, I'm just going to walk away with armfuls of stuff. And there are times when I feel guilty. I'll go and I spent £100 in charity shops today. I'm like, oh my god, I spent so much money. My friends will be like, oh, I just bought a shirt for £100. And I'll be like, well, I've bought 4 pairs of trousers, 8 shirts, 2 jumpers, and a really nice hat. It's incredible for
and
deals
contributed to a charity as well.
And I've contributed to a charity, and I'll take it home and I'll wear it until it doesn't fit me anymore, until it's broken, and then I'll take it to a clothing bank. And it's a circular economy. And I've travelled there by train, and it's really easy, and it's really nice, and it's nice cafes. Yeah, that's my advice. Is get out there and get some fresh air and buy some rich people clothes.
That's great. And as you go along on your cycling journey, are you going to be blogging about that?
Oh yes, I am going to be blogging and vlogging and tweeting and Instagramming and email newslettering. No matter how you engage with social media, or whether you don't, there is a way that you can find out what's going on. I'm going to be it's getting really complex, but I'm kind of telling like the journey of my day-to-day cycling and the journey of the people who I meet, and try and use that to kind of talk about mental health and hopefully meet other people who talked about their mental health issues. But I'm also really interested in telling the story of America. I'm starting on Cape Cod in a small town called Provincetown, which is where the Pilgrims first set foot in America.
Wow. And
this year is the 400th anniversary of the Pilgrims landing in America, and I'm kind of going through New York and through kind of the industrial kind of sort of the early sort of New England settlements, and then towards Chicago and the industrial Midwest and the birth of the car, and then I'm going out kind of west where the prairie lands are, where America expanded, and then I'm ending up in San Francisco and Silicon Valley, and kind of the America that many of us see today of this technologically advanced nation. So I'm hoping to kind of get a feel for what America is and tell a bit of a story of the history of America as I trace my journey. So hopefully there'll be something for everyone, and if nothing else, there'll be some pictures of my smiling ginger face.
That sounds absolutely perfect. We'll definitely put notes to everything in
Fantastic.
the podcast notes so that everybody can follow your journey.
Marvellous.
And support you. Thank you so much for coming along and talking.
Thank you so much for having me and inviting me in. I've had lots of fun talking with you.
Good luck for everything that you're doing.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
What's happening in this great city? We'll tell you. Wait a minute.
Antony Butcher, what a great person, and he was really brilliant to talk to. I very much enjoyed talking to him about mental health. In the notes for this podcast, you will find links to everything that we mention. So if you wanted to click and subscribe to his blog so you can find out what he's doing from day to day, I think that would be a really great thing to do. And there are links to how you can help him also on his journey. Music this week is by a great band called Weathered Man and The Noise, and the track is called Mr. Jones Says. I hope you enjoy it.
Toothache, get a sprain while you dance along to milkshake. Get some bad vibes, form a sad hive. Get a raise and then spend it like you're big time. There were 3 years, 7 magpies. Soon you know get a tea, so I'm ready